Ferrari had a somewhat mediocre 2023 year, finishing mere 3 points behind the Mercedes team in the constructors' standings. Now, with the new season about to start in a couple of months every F1 fan eagerly awaits to see how the 2024 cars are going to look like. One of the hottest topics of discussion recently has been Ferrari. The Italian team have claimed that they are about to change 95% of the car. That's right, 95% of the entire car going into the next season. So what are these changes, and will they be able to close the gap to Red Bull? Stick around and find out. Ferrari secured its 9th podium finish of the 2023 season in the last race. Charles Leclerc, whose second-place result at the Yas Marina track was never in doubt, tried to aid the team in securing P2, but narrowly missed out on that opportunity. However, the team in their debrief video stated, "Ferrari has demonstrated clear signs of progress in the second half of the season, establishing itself as the second-best team, as can be seen from its tally of 215 points since the summer break." While it is true that Ferrari have improved their performance compared to the first half of the season, the lack of consistency and improvement from their rivals, such as Aston Martin and McLaren, made it tougher for them to hold on in the standings. One of the key weaknesses of the SF23 car was the tyre degradation. The Italian racing car, although being the fastest in the one-lap pace, ate through its tyres pretty fast. So going into 2024, that is one of the major issues that the engineers at the Maranello factory are trying to sort out, and most likely they have achieved to do so. Ferrari is yet to unveil the name of the 2024 Challenger, but just like its predecessors, it is going to be called SF24. This year, the SF23 was the only car to win a Grand Prix outside of the reigning Red Bull RB19. But it was ultimately less successful than its predecessor. When asked if the new Ferrari's design was a revolution over the SF23, Vasseur responded, "I don't know if it is the right word. We have the same regulations now 3 years in a row. You can't massively change the situation. Again, it's tenths of a second, which means that it's 0.1 or 0.2% of performance that we are looking for. For sure, we have to do a step, and I don't underestimate this step. And it will be revolution is your word. We are changing 95% of the components of the car. Perhaps you can consider that it's a revolution. I don't know if it will be." According to sources from Italy, the much-awaited code-named Project 676, the 2024 car, would have a redesigned suspension system that incorporates the RB-inspired anti-dive and anti-squat principles. Along with it comes a completely new aero philosophy and a slightly smaller gearbox casing to fit an enlarged diffuser in order to accommodate new in-season modifications. The car won't be an RB19 replica because it will have Ferrari's own innovations in addition to the intrusion cone, which might be placed close to the floor. Fred Vasseur, the team principal, further stated about the launch date of the SF24 car as he said, "The launch will take place on the 13th of February, the day before Valentine's Day, and then you will see the rest on the 13th. We have the test a bit before, and it's quite a challenge to put everything together. It means we had no other option. I think also some other teams are doing it on the 14th, but it's quite challenging to be ready for Bahrain." Now, as I have talked about before about Red Bull's anti-dive and anti-squat suspension system that had been a game-changer for the 2023 season, it is evident from the last race in Abu Dhabi, where Verstappen finished 17 seconds ahead of the second-place driver, showing the clear signs that they have hidden pace, which will likely be carried over in the next season. So what's this suspension system? And what are its benefits that Ferrari will most likely implement in their 2024 car? Simply speaking, a pushrod system places the rocker at the top of the chassis, with a rod attaching it to the upright which pushes the rocker as the suspension compresses. A pull rod works the opposite way round, the rocker affixed to the bottom of the chassis, with a rod pulling it as the suspension compresses. There are benefits and disadvantages to both systems, but in the context of modern F1 cars, the general consensus since 2015 has settled on pushrod front and pull rod rear. This universal approach was driven by aerodynamics and packaging. And the former is no doubt the reason Red Bull and McLaren have opted for the approaches they have. The position of the front suspension components, sat as they are directly in the airflow coming off the front wing, means they have a considerable influence on that air as it heads towards the center and sides of the cars. Adjusting the position and shape of them can help move the air where it is most wanted, in as controlled a manner as possible, which is now into the underfloor tunnels. Mounting the springs and dampers on the underside of the chassis should theoretically have advantages because it raises the nose and reduces obstructions in the airflow to the underfloor. The amount of air that is retained inboard and transferred outboard from the front wing will probably depend on the angle of the push-pull rods. Other than that, the genius of RB19, which the Ferrari engineers should likely adopt, is how their car remains stable throughout the entire track, maintaining steady ground clearance. Because you can maintain the car as level as possible by using the pull rod at the front and the push rod at the back. You may limit the amount that the nose dips during braking by setting up your wishbones with a pull rod arrangement up front. Any car that has its brakes applied will tilt its front end towards the ground. You will be familiar with this sensation if you have ever had to use the brakes firmly when driving on the highway. Because they are using a pull, Red Bull is able to limit this effect by mounting its front wishbone very high on the nose cone of the RB18 and RB19. At the rear of the vehicle, the opposite is true. They install their rear wishbone quite high on the car by utilizing a pushrod arrangement. This prevents the car's rear end from rising up as it brakes. Red Bull is the only team on the grid to combine a pushrod rear suspension with a pull rod front suspension. The Red Bull car maintains its ground clearance better than any other car on the grid thanks to its anti-lift at the back and anti-dive at the front. Because of this, its downforce levels are far more constant, giving its drivers greater confidence in the vehicle's response. These are the characteristics that the engineers are aiming for with the SF24 car. While they claimed that they aren't going to actually copy the RB19 car, most likely the concept will remain the same behind the suspension geometry and aero design. But theory is one thing, and practical implementation is another. While they know that this particular suspension setup is best under the current regulations, the entire car must work as a package to be able to get the best performance out of it. This includes front wings, front brake ducts, underbody floor, floor edges, side pods, rear wings, and diffuser. One small part or design that doesn't work as intended, and the entire car will be a disaster. Just look at Mercedes, for example. So that is all for today's video. Will Ferrari be back in the title fight next season? And if so, will their 95% changed car be an imitation of Red Bull or a new design philosophy? Let us know in the comments below, and make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell icon to never miss another upload from us.